can I just ask, what on earth was the point of Clacton? I mean, it reminded me of Theresa May's famous 2017 boast, nothing has changed. Nigel Farage wins back his seat. He slightly increases his parliamentary majority. The Parliamentary Standards Commissioner's investigation... All right. Well, he went from 21...
He increased the votes cast in a reduced...
21,000 to 22,000, Gwaine. It's not that major.
But in a 59 to 43% turnout. So that's actually quite a significant improvement.
OK, but he's still being investigated. He still might face a recall petition and another by-election. He thinks there's going to...
Well, there you go. This is GB News Originals. I'm Emily Carver. Please do give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. And do leave a comment. Let me know what you think.
Going to be an election next year, so the good people of Clacton might be forced to go to the polls 4 times in 3 years. And by the way, it's costing a lot of money for what some perceive to be a Farage vanity project, Gwaine.
Yeah, I know that that question can be asked. I suppose I will come back to it. One could ask the same question about certain Josh Simon standing down, forcing a by-election, and then a £2.5 million by-election in Manchester, just so Andy Burnham can become Prime Minister without any scrutiny. These are also vanity elections, you might say. But no, in the question, basically, last year, whether one likes it or not, reform dominated the summer. This year, we have had sustained attacks on a whole series of levels to try and demoralise. I feel that the idea was to have a by-election, probably during conference, announced, so the Standards Committee announced their thing, disrupt our conference, disrupt the autumn for us. And the purpose of a standards inquiry and a recall by-election is that people in a constituency get to vote on whether they want an individual to be their MP after they understand the full facts of a particular case. Now, in this case, it is the gift of £5 million from Chris Harborne and the fact that it was not registered with the parliamentary authorities. According to the Survation poll that was taken about a week or so ago, over 90% of the people in Clacton know this. And so therefore that election last week, or this week just past, was taken in full understanding of those facts. Therefore, to have a further by-election would be, and I think it would be perceived particularly in Clacton by the people of Clacton, the establishment demanding another vote on something they've already voted on and ganging up on Farage.
Yes.
So I can see.
So you're hoping we've averted another by-election, even though it's not really in anyone's gift but Daniel Greenberg's and indeed MPs. If there's a recall petition, it only needs to get the support of 10% of MPs. Of course, the lefties will vote for it. It's not, you know, regardless of the point you've made, you might not be able to stop a second by-election.
The political illusion and the quiet coup inside Westminster. Look beneath the polished brass of the House of Commons and the curated soundbites echoing through Whitehall, because what you are being shown on the evening news is merely an elaborate theatre designed to keep you looking in precisely the wrong direction. Welcome to Britain Underneath, where we peel back the respectable veneer of the British establishment to reveal the cold, calculated mechanics of power operating quietly in the shadows. Take a breath, steady yourself, and stay informed with us today as we dissect the political manoeuvres that the mainstream media prefers to gloss over. If you value sharp, uncompromised analysis of United Kingdom politics, please take a brief moment right now to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and join our growing community, because supporting Britain Underneath allows us to keep bringing you these deep, independent investigations. Now, let us dive straight into the heart of the machine. When you look at the recent headlines dominating Westminster, from endless committee inquiries and procedural wrangling to manufactured party infighting, it is easy to assume that our political class is simply incompetent. That is the comfortable explanation. It allows us to feel intellectually superior while assuming that the institutions themselves remain fundamentally sound. However, a closer inspection of recent parliamentary developments reveals something far more deliberate. What we are witnessing is not accidental drift, but a structural realignment of power that bypasses traditional democratic accountability altogether. Consider the growing reliance on administrative manoeuvres and regulatory bodies to enforce decisions that politicians are simply too cowardly to put to a public vote. While the public remains locked in fierce debates over culture wars and party leadership rivalries, civil service directorates, unmonitored quangos, and international policy forums are quietly shaping the economic and social realities of everyday British life.
I think there's a couple of things. One, if there is another, if the Standards Committee suspend him for 10 working days of Parliament, which means that triggers a recall petition. Firstly, I would say that they will probably find him guilty because that's what they do. And a combination of the lanyard class and political opponents are unlikely to be nice to Farage. However, whether they choose the 10 days or say 8 days, so naughty boy, slap wrist, you were bad, we find you guilty, get out of the house for a few days, but not trigger the by-election. Because the by-election triggering would tell the people of Clacton they don't care what the people of Clacton think.
Yes.
So they get their bad boy slap wrist, but they don't force a by-election, which I think, if you were down there, you felt the mood of people in Clacton. They don't dislike Nigel Farage.
No.
They really don't.
But like saying,
and so that would feel
doing
like
a test,
establishment getting up.
But it doesn't matter how he's viewed in Clacton, the levels of his popularity. He's the MP there, he's been reinstalled there. Asking, is Nigel Farage popular in Clacton, is a bit like asking, does anyone want a flake 99 in Clacton? I mean, yes, of course.
So,
the issue here is the wider picture, Gwen. The wider picture for reform is not great. You know, you had that historic high summer of 2025. You're going backwards in the polls. We've now got YouGov suggesting that Labour has, for the first time, overtaken reform because of the Burnham bounce. Yes. You've got stories of infighting between Yusuf and the other Conservatives you brought in, who are kind of mixed in the popularity of themselves with your own membership. You've now got Rupert Lowe, who Farage should have dealt with more effectively, eating your lunch to some extent in some areas of the UK. So this is a problem too, and that's squeezed your vote. And by the way, you haven't destroyed the Tories. Bless them, they're still there. Mark Francois still there in Rayleigh. Kemi Badenoch's still there in Saffron Walden.
We haven't had a general election to get rid of them yet, have we?
Yeah, but the polling suggests they're on 20%.
Well, they've been bouncing around between 18 and 20% since Kemi Badenoch took over. Her polling ratings have gone up. There's no doubt about it. That's happened. This just happens. They've been flatlining at around about that point. And when it comes to actual elections that took place in May this year, as they did last year, we wiped the floor with the Tories. In Essex, for example, where Mark Francois is the MP, we won that constituency. We won in pretty much every Tory constituency in Essex in this year. So I'm sorry, votes cast, real votes, not polling, votes cast, Reform are still doing very well indeed.
But why have you gone backwards from 35% in the national polls to around 24%?
There is no doubt that there has been a slide, and we've got there was one poll that had us on 35. That was a complete outlier, so I'm going to ignore that. It was we were hitting around about 30, 31, and we're now hitting 20 to 23. Yeah, I think that's a fair summation. With that, there has been a reduction. I mean, last summer we dominated the polls. We've done very well in the local councils. This summer we did very well in the local councils, but then you had the Burnham thing, and that changed the weather. It just does, and you have to accept that Burnham is a more popular figure than Starmer.
Sorry to cut in, Gwen, but only because for time reasons we've got to wrap shortly. I do want to know what the status of this whole relationship or lack thereof with Lowe is. Lowe does his tweet, let's have a conversation. He claims he phoned Farage and then it went unanswered or something. Then Farage came out at the press conference I was at on Monday and said, look, we can't do a deal with this guy because he's surrounded by racists and neo-Nazis. What's the truth of it, Gwen?
Well, I think what a rather performative performance by Rupert when he put that video out, and it even had the sort of Werther's original tinkly music in the background, which I thought made me smile. But the point was he was making demands that were absurd from his position. he wanted to decide who our first team were. It was like Leyton Orient going to Arsenal and saying, right, we're not going to compete with you, but we're going to join up with you. But if we do, you can't play any foreigners in your first team. It was that crackers. But Nigel did respond. He texted him, and there was silence. So Nigel, I think, basically went, okay, we'll talk, and then couldn't. And then you have some of the young men surrounding Rupert with, at best, distinctly strange political ideas. Now, I know a lot of people from Restore. I know a lot of former reformers who are now supporting Restore. I like them. They're good people. And there's no way that we'd nail the door shut on them as we have on people like the BNP and others in the past. But I think there are young men around Mr. Lowe who have an extremely high opinion of their own brilliance. And they are not unintelligent. But the problem with intelligence, particularly in young people, is that they think everybody else is stupid.
Yes.
And this is, I think, a problem they have. And I don't think Rupert is necessarily in lockstep with these young men, but I think they do control his social media.
Indeed so. Gwaine, we have to leave it.
Decisions regarding public infrastructure funding, energy grid allocations, and local council fiscal autonomy are increasingly being stripped away from elected local representatives and placed into the hands of permanent, unelected boards. It is a quiet centralisation of authority, disguised as modern technocratic efficiency. If this level of uncompromising insight resonates with you, please consider hitting the subscribe button for Britain Underneath right now. Your subscription helps this channel remain fully independent, enabling us to produce thorough, research-heavy commentary without having to tone down our conclusions or answer to corporate sponsors. The art of modern governance in Westminster has become the art of distraction. When a government or an opposition party faces systemic failure, the playbook dictates an immediate pivot toward high-drama parliamentary performance. We see urgent questions called, emergency debates scheduled, and endless media appearances where ministers and shadow ministers trade rehearsed barbs. Yet, when you examine the actual legislative output, the statutory instruments passed under the radar during late-night sittings often carry far more weight than the flagship bills endlessly debated on the floor of the House. This dynamic is particularly evident in how economic policy is currently handled. While official statements trumpet economic stability and localised investment initiatives, the underlying reality for millions across the UK tells a remarkably different story.
Local authorities across the country are quietly issuing notices of financial distress, cutting essential public services to the absolute bone, while central government departments shift fiscal liabilities further down the chain. The result is a system where no one accepts ultimate responsibility. Local councils blame central treasury allocations, Whitehall blames global market pressures, and the taxpayer is left paying significantly more for vastly diminished public returns. It is precisely this web of deflective rhetoric that we aim to untangle here on Britain Underneath. We believe that a mature democracy requires a public that is willing to look past performative outrage and demand structural accountability. If you agree that British political discourse desperately needs more rigorous, calm, and fearless commentary, please take a quick second to subscribe to the channel. It takes only a single click, but it makes an immense difference in helping us reach more viewers who are equally tired of superficial coverage. Furthermore, we must address the changing nature of political opposition in the UK. Historically, the parliamentary system relied on a robust counterweight to keep the executive in check. Today, however, we observe a striking convergence in fundamental policy direction across the major political parties. Despite the fierce rhetoric exchanged at the dispatch box,
the overarching framework regarding taxation, state surveillance, digital infrastructure, and foreign commitments remains virtually identical, regardless of who holds the keys to number 10. The political battleground has been artificially narrowed to minor management tweaks and aesthetic differences, leaving genuine alternative visions completely unrepresented in the chamber. This consensus of the establishment creates a profound disconnect between the electorate and those who claim to represent them. When citizens realise that voting merely changes the management team rather than the underlying policy direction, apathy inevitably sets in. Yet that apathy is precisely what allows the system to function without friction. A disengaged public is far easier to manage than an informed, vigilant one. That is why your presence here matters so much. By choosing to stay informed and seeking out analysis that digs beneath the surface, you actively push back against this enforced political fatigue. Please make sure you are subscribed to Britain Underneath. Share this narrative with others who appreciate mature political analysis, and leave your thoughts in the comments section below. We read your contributions carefully, as they help shape the direction of our future investigations. The machinery of British power relies entirely on the assumption that you will stop paying attention once the formal broadcasts end. Do not afford them that luxury. Stay watchful, demand substance over spectacle, and join us on our next deep dive as we continue to uncover the realities shaping our nation. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to welcoming you back to Britain Underneath very soon.